It was February 3rd, 2026 at 2:47 a.m. when a dream so violent, so consuming, drove me to the prairie grasslands 30 miles outside of town. And there, surrounded by an ocean of wild grass, bending beneath storm clouds that churned like the very heart of God, was wrestling with judgment. Jesus appeared before me with tears streaming down his face and said that this February, is the month when heaven separates those who are truly listening from those who are merely religious. Not everyone who sees this message is meant to see it. Some will scroll past, some will ignore it, but you've been marked. I can still feel the cold wind that cut through my jacket that night. The temperature had dropped to 38 degrees, and the air tasted like rain that hadn't yet fallen, metallic, electric, alive with something I can't fully explain. The grass, tall enough to reach my waist in places, moved in waves that looked silver under the moonlight, breaking through gaps in the storm clouds. And the sound, God, the sound, it was like the earth itself was whispering secrets it had kept since the foundation of the world. Before I go any further, I need you to do something. I need you to leave your prayer requests in the comments below. I don't care how impossible they seem. I don't care how long you've been waiting. If you're seeing this video right now at this exact moment, it's not an accident, and I'm going to pray over every single request personally. And please, if you're a true believer, not just someone who calls themselves a Christian on Sunday, but lives like the world the other 6 days, subscribe to this channel. Hit that notification bell, because what I'm about to share with you over these next few nights, the enemy does not want you to hear. YouTube's algorithm doesn't want to show you this. The comfortable, lukewarm church doesn't want you to know this. But heaven has marked you, and you need to hear every word. For those who don't know me, my name is Sylvester Stallone. I play Jesus in the Chosen, and that role has wrecked me, transformed me, broken me open in ways I never expected. I don't share these encounters lightly. I don't speak about these things to gain followers or build a platform. I share them because when Jesus shows you something, when he pulls back the veil between heaven and earth, you have no choice but to speak. That night, that freezing February night, I hadn't planned to drive out to those grasslands. I'd been asleep in my bed, exhausted from filming, when the dream bear hit me like a freight train. In the dream, I was standing in a massive room filled with people, thousands of them. They were all dressed for church, nice clothes, Bibles in hand, worship music playing, but their eyes were completely white, no pupils, no iris, just white. And they were all walking in circles around and around, singing songs they didn't mean, praying prayers they didn't believe, going through motions that had become as meaningless as a dance they'd forgotten the purpose of. And then Jesus walked into that room. But he didn't look like I portray him in The Chosen. He didn't look gentle or approachable. His eyes were fire, literal fire. And when he spoke, the building shook. "They honor me with their lips," he said, his voice like thunder and breaking glass. "But their hearts are far from me. And in February, I am marking those whose hearts are truly mine." I woke up gasping, my heart hammering against my ribs, sweat soaking through my shirt despite the cold night. And I heard it audibly, not just in my spirit, a voice that said, "Go to the grasslands." Now, I'm not someone who hears audible voices from God regularly. I'm not a charismatic who sees visions every day. I'm an actor, a broken man trying to follow Jesus the best I know how. So when I hear something that clear, that undeniable, I obey. I threw on jeans, a jacket, and drove. The roads were empty at that hour, just me and the occasional semi-truck hauling goods through the darkness. I didn't even know exactly where I was going until I saw the turnoff, a dirt road leading into the Prairie Preserve. I'd driven past 100 times, but never visited. The moment I stepped out of my car, the wind hit me. It wasn't just wind, it was purposeful, directional, like breath. The storm clouds above were moving in circular patterns, and lightning flickered inside them without ever striking the ground. The air pressure made my ears pop. Every blade of grass seemed to be leaning in the same direction, pointing toward a small rise about 200 yards away. I started walking. The grass whispered against my jeans. An owl called from somewhere in the darkness. The earth beneath my feet was hard-packed and uneven, and I stumbled twice before my eyes adjusted enough to see by the moonlight. My breath came out in visible clouds. My hands were shaking, not from cold, but from the overwhelming sense that I was walking towards something that would change everything. When I reached the top of that rise, I stopped. The view was breathtaking. The prairie stretched out in every direction like a dark ocean, rolling and endless. The storm clouds above created a canopy that seemed both threatening and protective. And there, standing 20 feet in front of me, was Jesus. I fell to my knees immediately, not because I decided to, because my legs simply gave out. He was wearing simple clothes, a tunic that moved in the wind, feet bare despite the cold ground, but his face was the same face I've studied for years, the same face I try to portray with every ounce of my being. But it was more. It was more real, more present, more alive than anything I'd ever seen. His eyes held galaxies. His presence made the air thick, and he was weeping. "Jonathan," he said, and my name in his mouth sounded like a song and a sword at the same time. "Do you know what month this is?" "February," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the wind. "February," he repeated, and he looked up at the storm clouds. "The month when most of my people are still sleeping, the month when they're recovering from failed New Year's resolutions, settling back into comfortable routines, going through the motions of faith without the fire of faith. But this February, this specific February, I am marking those who are truly mine." He walked toward me, and with each step, the grass beneath his feet seemed to glow faintly, as if his presence brought light to everything he touched. "You've been marked," he said, kneeling down so his eyes were level with mine. "Not because you're special, not because you're more righteous than others, but because you're willing to listen. You're willing to be uncomfortable. You're willing to stand in a freezing field at 3 a.m. because you heard my voice." I was trembling. Tears were streaming down my face, mixing with the cold wind. "Lord," I managed to say, "what does it mean to be marked?" His expression shifted, still sorrowful, but now with an edge of urgency that made my stomach clench. "Look," he said, gesturing toward the prairie. And suddenly I could see them. Thousands, no, millions of lights scattered across the grasslands like stars that had fallen to earth. Some were bright, burning like bonfires. Others were dim, barely flickering, and some were going out entirely, winking into darkness one by one. "These are my people," Jesus said, his voice heavy with grief. "Each light is a soul that has called on my name. But look closer. What do you see?" I stared at the lights, and as I watched, I began to notice patterns. The bright ones were moving, shifting, growing. The dim ones were stationary, stuck in place, and the ones going out. They were surrounded by other lights that kept burning, but they were isolated, alone, disconnected. "The bright ones," I said slowly, "they're the ones who are truly seeking you. The dim ones they're comfortable, complacent, and the ones going out are those who have been marked by the enemy." Jesus finished, his voice like iron. "Those who think they're mine, but have never truly surrendered. Those who come to church, sing the songs, post the Bible verses, but their hearts are chasing the world. And in February, this February, the separation is happening." He stood, pulling me my feet with him. The wind picked up, howling across the prairie with such force that I had to lean into it to stay standing. "I'm about to do something extraordinary," Jesus said, his voice rising above the wind. "Something that will shake every comfortable Christian out of their sleep. Something that will expose every false convert, every lukewarm believer, every person who has used my name for their own purposes. And those who are marked, those who are truly mine, will be equipped for what's coming. They will be given authority, power, clarity, and purpose that will astound them." Lightning cracked across the sky, illuminating the entire prairie for a split second. In that flash of light, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Among the millions of lights, there were shadows moving, dark shapes that slithered between the flickering flames, snuffing them out one by one. They moved with purpose, with intelligence, with a hunger that was palpable, even from a distance. "What are those?" I asked, my voice shaking. "The enemy's forces," Jesus said simply. "They have always been there, but most of my people refuse to see them. They've been taught that spiritual warfare is metaphorical, that demons are symbolic, that the battle is just about positive thinking and good morals. But you're seeing the truth now. The war is real. The enemy is real, and he is targeting my people with a fury he's never shown before. because he knows his time is short. I watched as one of the shadows approached a dim light, a flickering flame that barely illuminated the grass around it. The shadow circled it once, twice, and then suddenly engulfed it. The light went out. Gone. Just like that. No, I shouted, stepping forward as if I could do something to stop it. Jesus put his hand on my shoulder, and the touch sent warmth flooding through my entire body. That one chose comfort over consecration, he said quietly. That one chose entertainment over intimacy with me. That one heard my voice calling them deeper, calling them to sacrifice, calling them to truly die to themselves. And they said, maybe later, they said, I'm doing enough. They said, I'm better than most Christians. And now they are defenseless. I turned to look at him, and the sorrow in his eyes was unbearable. But the ones who are marked, he continued, the ones who respond to my call in this season, they will burn so bright that the darkness cannot even approach them. They will be like cities on hills, like lighthouses in storms, like fires that spread and consume everything dead and bring life to everything they touch. He released my shoulder and walked a few steps away, his back to me, his face turned toward the storm clouds. Jonathan, I need you to tell them, tell everyone who will listen. February is not just another month. It's not just the space between January and March. It's the month I have chosen to mark my remnant. It's the month when I'm separating the wheat from the chaff, the sheep from the goats, the true worshipers from the pretenders. But Lord, I said, my mind racing, how will they know if they're marked? How will they know if they're one of the bright lights or one of the dim ones? He turned back to me, and for the first time that night he smiled. It was a sad smile, but it held hope. They'll know, he said, because they won't be able to ignore this message. They'll feel it in their spirit, a stirring, a hunger, a desperation for more of me. They'll be the ones who watch this video all the way through instead of scrolling past. They'll be the ones who feel conviction instead of condemnation. They'll be the ones who say yes before they even know what I'm asking. The wind began to die down slightly, and the first drops of rain started to fall. Cold, heavy drops that hit my face like tiny hammers. Come back tomorrow night, Jesus said, his form beginning to fade like mist in the wind. Same place, same time. There's more you need to see, more you need to understand. The marking has only just begun. Wait, I called out, reaching toward him. What do I tell them to do? What's the first step? His voice came from everywhere and nowhere, carried on the wind and rain. Tell them to stop the noise, stop the distractions, stop the endless scrolling and consuming and running. Tell them to get alone with me, truly alone, and ask me one question. Am I marked? And I will answer. I always answer those who truly want to know. And then he was gone. I stood there in the rain for another 20 minutes, maybe longer. The storm clouds opened up fully, drenching me, but I didn't care. I was watching the lights across the prairie, some growing brighter even as I watched, others flickering and fading. And I knew with absolute certainty that everything Jesus had shown me was true. Listen to me. If you're still watching this, if you've made it this far, you need to understand something. You are marked. The very fact that you're hearing these words, that you haven't clicked away, that something in your spirit is responding to this message. That's the mark. That's he even saying, this one is mine. But being marked is just the beginning. Tomorrow night, I'm going back to those grasslands. Jesus told me there's more, much more that he needs to show me, and I'm going to share every single detail with you. Until then, I need you to do what he said. Get alone, turn off your phone, turn off the TV, turn off every distraction, get somewhere quiet. It doesn't have to be a prairie in the middle of the night. It can be your bedroom, your car, your backyard, and ask him, am I marked? And then listen, really listen. Drop a comment below if you're committing to do this. Just type, I'm marked. If you're ready to go deeper than you've ever gone before. If you're ready to stop playing church and start being the church, if you're ready to burn bright instead of flickering in the darkness. Tomorrow night, I'll tell you what happened on the second night. And the first, I'm warning you now, it's going to challenge everything you think you know about what it means to follow Jesus. This is not a game. This is not religious entertainment. This is life and death, light and darkness, heaven's mark, or the enemy's target. Choose wisely. I'll see you tomorrow night. I didn't sleep after that first encounter. How could I? I sat in my car as the sun rose over those prairie grasslands, watching the storm clouds break apart into fragments of gold and crimson. And all I could think about were those lights, millions of them flickering across the darkness, some burning bright, some dying out. And somewhere in that vast spiritual landscape, my own light was either growing or fading. The day passed in a blur. I tried to work, tried to focus on normal things, but everything felt hollow. I kept checking my phone, reading your comments. Thousands of you typed, I marked, thousands more shared your prayer requests, desperate pleas for healing, for breakthrough, for salvation of loved ones. And as I read them, I felt the weight of what Jesus had shown me pressing down on my chest like a physical force. Because here's what I realized. Most of us have no idea how serious this is. We treat our faith like a hobby, like a social club, like an insurance policy against hell. But what I saw in those grasslands wasn't a game. It was war. And the casualties are real. February 4th, 2026 at 2:47 a.m., the exact same time as the night before, I woke up without an alarm. My eyes simply opened and I knew he was waiting. The drive back to the prairie felt different this time. I wasn't confused or uncertain. I was terrified because I knew that whatever Jesus was going to show me tonight would be harder to bear than what I'd already seen. The first night was the overview. Tonight would be the details. The temperature had dropped even further, 32-degree right at freezing. My breath fogged the windshield as I drove down that dirt road, and when I stepped out of the car, the grass was stiff with frost. Each blade caught the moonlight like a tiny silver knife. The storm clouds were back, but different, lower, heavier, pressing down on the earth like a lid on a boiling pot. I walked to the same rise where I'd met him before, and this time I could feel the spiritual atmosphere before I even reached the top. The air was thick, resistant, like walking through water. My ears were ringing. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Jesus was already there, standing in the exact same spot. But tonight he wasn't alone. There were angels with him, 3 of them, massive beings that made the air shimmer around them. Their forms barely contained in something resembling human shape. They didn't have wings like in the paintings. They had presence, authority, power that made my knees weak. And their faces, I can't even describe their faces. Too bright, too intense, too other. Jonathan, Jesus said, and his voice was different tonight, harder, more urgent. You came back? Of course I came back, I said. And I was surprised by how steady my voice sounded, despite the fear coursing through me. You told me to, he nodded, and something like approval flickered in his eyes. Then he gestured to the angels. These are warriors, he said. They've been fighting on behalf of my marked ones since before you were born. Tonight they're going to show you what that fight looks like. And I'm warning you now, what you're about to see will break your heart. One of the angels stepped forward. When it moved, the grass beneath its feet didn't bend. It bowed as if the earth itself was worshiping. The angel raised one hand. Suddenly the prairie transformed. I could see them again, the millions of lights representing believers scattered across the landscape. But now I could see more. I could see the prayers rising from each light like smoke, like incense spiraling up toward heaven. Some prayers were thick and golden, full of faith and desperation. Others were thin and gray, barely visible, the kind of prayers prayed out of obligation rather than relationship. And I could see the demons. God help me. I could see them clearly now. They weren't addos anymore. They were fully formed, hideous creatures that moved with terrifying intelligence. Some were small, scurrying things that whispered lies into the ears of believers. Others were massive, towering entities that stood over entire churches, over entire cities, spreading their wings like a canopy of darkness. This is what most of my people refuse to believe exists, Jesus said, standing beside me as we watched. They've been taught that demons are metaphors, that spiritual warfare is just about having positive thoughts, that the enemy is just negativity or bad vibes. But look at what's really happening. I watched as one of the small demons approached the dim light, a believer whose prayers were thin and sporadic. The demon whispered something, and immediately the light flickered. The prayer that had been rising stopped mid-ascent and dissipated like smoke and wind. What did it say? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. It said, "You're too busy right now. You can pray later. God understands." Jesus replied, and the grief in his voice was palpable, and that believer agreed. They chose their schedule over their Savior. They chose their comfort over their calling. And now watch what happens. Another demon approached, then another. Within minutes, that single light was surrounded by a dozen of them, all whispering, all lying, all pulling that believer further and further from the truth. And the light grew dimmer and dimmer until it was barely a spark. But the marked ones, Jesus said, pointing to a different area of the prairie, look at them. I turned my attention to where he was pointing, and what I saw made my breath catch. There was a cluster of lights burning so bright they looked like miniature suns. Their prayers rose like pillars of fire, thick and golden and unstoppable. And when demons approached them, and they did approach in greater numbers than they approached the dim lights, something incredible happened. The angels moved. I watched as one of the warrior angels, not one of the three standing with us, but another one I hadn't noticed before, stepped between a demon and one of the bright lights. The angel didn't even have to fight. It simply stood there, and the demon recoiled as if it had touched fire. It shrieked, a sound that made my bones ache, and fled. The marked ones have protection, Jesus said. Not because they're perfect, not because they never struggle or doubt, but because they've said yes to me completely. They've surrendered everything. They've chosen intimacy over image. They've chosen the secret place over the spotlight. And because of that, my angels have full authority to defend them. He walked forward and I followed, my legs shaking. The frost-covered grass crunched under our feet. The wind picked up again, carrying with it the scent of rain and something else, something that smelled like burning. Let me show you something specific, Jesus said, and he pointed to a particular light in the distance. That's a pastor, a man who leads a church of 3,000 people. He preaches every Sunday. He's written books. He's on Christian television, and his light is dying. I stared at the light he indicated. It was dim, surrounded by demons that weren't even bothering to whisper anymore. They were shouting, celebrating, dancing around it like it was already defeated. Why? I asked. What happened to him? He chose Amay over faithfulness, Jesus said, and his voice was like iron. 10 years ago, I called him to a small church in a small town. I called him to love 20 people deeply, to disciple them, to pour his life into them. But he wanted more. He wanted the big stage. He wanted the book deals and the conference invitations and the social media following. So he left the place I called him to and built an empire instead of a family. But he's still preaching your word, I protested. He's still leading people to you. Jesus turned to look at me, and the intensity in his eyes made me take a step back. Is he asked, or is he leading people to a version of me that makes them comfortable, a version that doesn't require sacrifice or surrender, a version that promises blessing without obedience, grace without repentance, heaven without holiness? I didn't have an answer. His light is dying, Jesus continued, turning back to watch the scene unfold because he stopped listening to my voice and started listening to the crowd. And now the demons have almost complete access to him. They feed him sermon ideas that tickle ears instead of transform hearts. They whisper strategies for church growth that have nothing to do with my kingdom. They convince him that numbers equal success, that popularity equals anointing, that influence equals intimacy with me. As I watched, the light flickered one more time and then went out, just like that, gone. No, I shouted, starting forward as if I could do something, anything to bring it back. Jesus caught my arm, his grip firm but gentle. It's not too late for him, he said quietly. Even now, if he would humble himself, if he would repent, if he would return to the hell I gave him, his light could be rekindled. But Jonathan, listen to me. The longer someone ignores my voice, the harder it becomes to hear it. The longer someone chooses their way over my way, the more normal the darkness feels. That pastor right now thinks everything is fine. He thinks his ministry is thriving. He has no idea that spiritually he's already dead. I felt tears streaming down my face. The wind was howling now, and the first drops of rain began to fall, cold and sharp, like tiny accusations. How many? I asked, my voice breaking. How many lights are going out like this? Jesus was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with a sorrow that seemed to encompass all of human history. More than you can imagine, he said. Thousands every day, pastors who started well but lost their way, worship leaders who sing about me on Sunday but live for themselves the rest of the week, Christians who know all the right words but have never truly known me. They're all dying, Jonathan. Their lights are going out, and most of them don't even realize it. He released my arm and walked to the edge of the rise, looking out over the vast prairie. The rain was falling harder now, soaking through my jacket, plastering my hair to my forehead. Lightning flickered in the clouds above, illuminating the landscape in brief, stark flashes. But this is why I'm marking people in February, Jesus said, raising his voice above the storm. This is why I'm separating the wheat from the chaff right now, because what's coming, what's about to happen in this world will require believers who are truly mine, not people who call themselves Christians, not people who go to see church out of habit, not people who have a form of godliness but deny its power. I need warriors. I need burning lights. I need people who will stand firm when everything around them is shaking. One of the angels stepped forward and spoke for the first time. Its voice was like 1,000 voices speaking in perfect harmony, beautiful and terrible at the same time. The marked ones will be given authority, the angel said. They will cast out demons. They will heal the sick. They will speak truth that cuts through deception like a sword through darkness. They will be hated by the world and misunderstood by the lukewarm church. But they will be loved by heaven. They will be protected by us. And they will accomplish more in the next season than they could accomplish in a lifetime of their own strength. I fell to my knees in the mud and rain. I couldn't stand any more. The weight of what I was seeing, what I was hearing was too much. Lord, I cried out, I want to be marked. I want to be one of the burning lights, but I'm so weak. I'm so broken. I fail you every single day. How can I possibly? Jesus knelt beside me in the mud, his hand on my shoulder, his face close to mine. Jonathan, he said, and his voice was tender now, full of love that made my chest ache. Do you think I don't know your weaknesses? Do you think I don't see every failure, every doubt, every moment you've fallen short? I know you better than you know yourself. And I'm not looking for perfect people. I'm looking for willing people. I'm looking for people who will say yes even when they're afraid. People who will obey even when it doesn't make sense. People who will choose me over comfort, over reputation, over staff. Edie. He lifted my chin so I was looking directly into his eyes. You are marked, he said firmly, not because you're strong, but because you're willing to be made strong, not because you have it all together, but because you're willing to let me put you together. The mark isn't about your ability, it's about your availability. The rain was pouring now, a deluge that turned the prairie into a sea of mud and water. But I didn't care. I was weeping, my whole body shaking with sobs that came from somewhere deeper than emotion, from my spirit, from the very core of who I was. What do you want from me? I asked. What do you want from all of us who are watching this, who are hearing this message? Jesus stood, pulling me to my feet with him. The three angels moved closer, forming a circle around us. And in that moment, standing in the pouring rain on a muddy rise in the middle of a prairie, I felt more protected, more loved, more seen than I'd ever felt in my life. I want everything, Jesus said simply. I want your mornings before you check your phone. I want your thoughts before they spiral into worry. I want your dreams, your plans, your ambitions laid at my feet. I want the secret sins you think no one knows about brought into the light. I want the relationships you're clinging to that I've told you to release. I want the ministries you're building in your own strength surrendered to my spirit. I want the comfort you're addicted to traded for the adventure of true faith. He paused and lightning cracked across the sky, illuminating his face in stark relief. I want you to stop playing it safe, he said, his voice rising with intensity. I want you to stop caring what people think. I want you to stop measuring your faith by how comfortable your life is. I want you to burn, Jonathan. I want you to burn so bright that demons flee at the mention of your name. I want you to burn so hot that lukewarm Christians are either ignited or offended by your presence. I want you to be a light that cannot be hidden, a city on a hill, a fire that spreads. Yes, I whispered, yes, Lord, whatever it takes. Then come back tomorrow night, he said, and his form began to fade along with the angels. one more night, one more encounter, because tomorrow I'm going to show you what happens to those who refuse the mark. I'm going to show you the consequences of choosing comfort over consecration. And I'm going to give you the specific instructions for what comes next. Wait, I called out as he disappeared into the rain and darkness. What do I tell them to do tonight? What's the next step? His voice came back to me, carried on the wind. Tell them to count the cost. Tell them that being marked isn't just about receiving blessing. It's about accepting the burden of true discipleship. Tell them to get alone with me again tonight and ask, am I willing to pay the price? Because many will want the mark, but few will want what comes with it. And then he was gone, and I was alone in the storm. I stood there for another hour, maybe more, letting the rain wash over me. I was thinking about all of you watching this. I was thinking about the lights I'd seen, the bright ones and the dim ones and the ones going out. I was thinking about that pastor whose light had died while he thought his ministry was thriving. And I was thinking about my own light, my own compromises, my own areas where I'd chosen comfort over calling. Here's what I need you to understand. This isn't a message about other people. This isn't about judging the lukewarm church or pointing fingers at false converts. This is about you. This is about me. This is about every single person who claims the name of Jesus, examining their own heart and asking the hard questions. Are you truly marked, or are you just religious? Is your light burning bright, or is it flickering in the darkness surrounded by demons you refuse to acknowledge? Are you willing to pay the price of true discipleship, or do you just want the benefits of Christianity without the sacrifice? I need you to do something tonight. I need you to get alone with God, really alone, and I need you to ask him to show you the truth about your spiritual condition, not what you hope it is, not what you tell other people. It is the truth. Ask him, am I willing to pay the price of being marked? And then listen, really listen, because he will answer. And his answer might make you uncomfortable. It might convict you. It might require you to make changes you don't want to make. But I promise you this, if you're willing to hear the truth and respond to it, your light will begin to burn brighter immediately. The angels will take notice. Heaven will mobilize on your behalf, and the enemy will lose his grip on areas of your life he's controlled for years. Drop a comment below if you're committing to this. Type, I'm willing to pay the price. If you're ready to move from casual Christianity to consecrated discipleship, tomorrow night is the final encounter. Tomorrow night, Jesus is going to show me the consequences of refusing the mark. And I'm telling you now, it's going to be the hardest thing I've ever had to share, but you need to hear it. We all need to hear it, because February is not just another month. It's the month of separation. It's the month of marking. It's the month when heaven is dividing the true from the false, the committed from the comfortable, the burning lights from the dying embers. Which one will you be? I'll see you tomorrow night, same time, final encounter. Don't miss it. I'm not going to lie to you. I almost didn't go back the third night. After the second encounter, I spent the entire day of February 4th in a state I can only describe as spiritual vertigo. Everything looked different. My house felt different. The conversations I had with people felt hollow, surface level, meaningless. I kept seeing those lights in my mind, the bright ones, the dim ones, the ones going out, and I kept hearing Jesus's words, I want everything. I read through thousands of your comments. Some of you typed, I'm willing to pay the price. With such conviction, it brought tears to my eyes. Others were honest enough to say, I'm scared, or I don't know if I can do this. And that honesty, that raw, vulnerable honesty, is exactly what Jesus is looking for. He doesn't want our pretense. He wants our truth. But there were other comments too, angry ones. People calling me a false prophet, saying I was manipulating emotions, accusing me of using Jesus' name for views and money. And I'll be honest, those comments shook me, not because I believed them, but because I knew what was happening. The enemy was stirring up opposition, because what Jesus was revealing through these encounters was threatening to the comfortable, lukewarm version of Christianity that so many have settled for. February 5th, 2026, at 2:47 a.m., I woke up with a sense of dread so heavy I could barely breathe. I knew this was the final night. I knew Jesus was going to show me something that would change me forever. And part of me, the weak human part of me, wanted to stay in bed, wanted to pull the covers over my head and pretend I'd never seen those grasslands, never met Jesus there, never been marked for this impossible task of telling the truth to a church that doesn't want to hear it. But I got up, I got dressed, and I drove. The temperature had dropped to 28 degrees. The storm clouds that had been present the previous 2 nights were gone, replaced by a sky so clear and full of stars. It looked like someone had torn a hole in the fabric of space itself. The Milky Way stretched across the heavens like a river of light, and the moon, nearly full, cast everything in silver and shadow. When I reached the prairie grasslands and stepped out of my car, the silence was absolute. No wind, no owl calls, no rustling grass, just silence so complete it felt like the earth itself was holding its breath. I walked to the rise, and with each step, the dread in my chest grew heavier. The frost-covered grass crunched under my feet, each sound impossibly loud in the stillness. My breath came out in clouds that hung in the air like ghosts. And when I reached the top of that rise, I stopped. Jesus was there, but he wasn't alone. The 3 angels from the night before were there, but now there were more. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, standing in formation like an army preparing for battle. Their presence made the air shimmer and warp. And in front of them all, Jesus stood with his back to me, looking out over the prairie. Lord, I said quietly, my voice sounding small and fragile in that vast space. He turned, and what I saw in his face made my knees buckle. It wasn't anger. It was something worse. It was grief so profound, so all-encompassing, that it seemed to radiate from him like heat from a fire. His eyes were red, as if he'd been weeping for hours. His hands were clenched at his sides. "Jonathan," he said, and his voice was rough, strained. "Are you ready to see what happens to those who refuse the mark?" "I don't know," I answered honestly, and I was shaking now, not from cold, but from fear. "But I'm here, I'm listening." He nodded slowly, then gestured to the prairie. Look, the landscape transformed again, but this time it was different. This time I wasn't just seeing the lights representing believers. I was seeing time itself unfolding. I was seeing the future. The millions of lights were still there, scattered across the darkness. But now I could see what was coming toward them. On the horizon, like a tsunami of shadow, a wave of darkness was approaching. It moved slowly but inexorably, consuming everything in its path. And as it drew closer, I could see what it was made of: persecution, deception, fear, chaos, tribulation. "What's coming to this world," Jesus said, his voice heavy, "will test every single person who claims my name. It will separate the wheat from the chaff faster than anything in human history. And those who are not truly mine, those who have refused the mark, who have chosen comfort over consecration, they will not survive it." I watched in horror as the wave of darkness reached the first cluster of lights, the dim ones, the flickering, barely there lights of lukewarm believers went out instantly, just snuffed out like candles in a hurricane. Gone. No struggle, no fight, just gone. "No," I whispered, tears already streaming down my face. "Please, no. These are the ones who thought they had time," Jesus said, and his voice was breaking. "These are the ones who heard my call to go deeper, to surrender more, to truly know me." And they said later, they said, "I'm busy." They said, "I'm doing enough." And now, when the testing comes, they have no foundation, no root, no real relationship with me to sustain them. The wave continued, and I watched as it reached a church, a massive building with a cross on top, surrounded by hundreds of dim lights. When the darkness hit, the building crumbled, the lights went out, and in their place I saw people, actual people, wandering in confusion, crying out for help that didn't come, reaching for a God they'd never truly known. That's a church that preached a false gospel, Jesus said, pointing to the ruins. They preached prosperity without persecution. They preached grace without repentance. They preached a version of me that required nothing and promised everything. And their people believed them. They thought they were saved. They thought they were secure, but they built their faith on sand. And when the storm came, It collapsed. I fell to my knees, sobbing. How many, Lord? How many are going to be lost? More than you can bear to. No, he said quietly. But Jonathan, look at the marked ones. Through my tears, I forced myself to watch as the wave of darkness reached the bright lights, the burning, blazing lights of those who had truly surrendered everything to Jesus. And something miraculous happened. The darkness couldn't touch them. It crashed against them like waves against a lighthouse. But they stood firm. Not only did they stand firm, they grew brighter. The testing, the persecution, the chaos that destroyed the lukewarm believers only made the marked ones burn hotter, shine brighter, stand taller. And then I saw something that made my breath catch. The marked ones began to move. They left their positions and went into the darkness, searching for survivors. They found people who were lost, confused, desperate, and they led them back to the light. They found dim lights that hadn't quite gone out yet, and they reignited them. They became rescue missions in human form. This is why I'm marking people now, Jesus said, kneeling beside me in the frost-covered grass. Not to make them comfortable, not to give them an easy life, but to prepare them for what's coming, to equip them to stand when everything around them is falling, to empower them to be lights in the darkest hour this world has ever seen. One of the angels stepped forward, the largest one, with a presence so powerful it made the air crackle. The marked ones will perform signs and wonders, the angel said, its voice like thunder, rolling across mountains. They will heal the sick with a word. They will cast out demons with authority that makes hell tremble. They will speak prophetic words that cut through deception like lightning through darkness. They will be hated by the world, betrayed by false brothers, persecuted by religious leaders who feel threatened by their power. But they will be unstoppable because they won't be operating in their own strength. They'll be operating in His. Jesus stood pulling me to my feet with Him. The stars above seemed to pulse with light, and I realized that the entire heavenly host was watching this moment. Angels beyond counting filling the sky, waiting to see what would happen next. Jonathan, Jesus said, gripping both my shoulders and looking directly into my eyes, I need you to understand something. The mark isn't just a blessing, it's a burden. It's a call to die to yourself daily. It's a call to be misunderstood, rejected, persecuted. It's a call to give up everything the world values for everything heaven treasures, and not everyone who hears this message will accept it. I know, I said, my voice steady despite the tears. I've seen the comments. I've seen the pushback. The pushback will get worse, he said, much worse, because the enemy knows that every person who accepts the mark is a soldier. He loses a light. He can't extinguish a voice. He can't silence. He will attack you. He will attack everyone who responds to this message. He will use